Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to this 5th year of celebration of Global Oneness Festival on the occasion of the birthday of Adi Shankaracharya, Bhagavadpada Acharya. I will start with the Shanti part, Guru Vandana, followed by 2 verses by Adi Shankaracharya and 1 by his Prasthana-traya Guru, Shri Bhagavadpadacharya. These 3 verses, along with the Shanti part, is the full crux of Advaita Vedanta school. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Guru Parampara. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shlokardhena Pravakshyami Yaduktam Granthakotivihi Brahma Satyam Jaganmithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. Inyotistavavanumanani Ratrau Pradipaditam Syadevam Ravidipadarshanamitau Kinjyotirakhyahime Chakshustasya Nimilanadi Samaye Kinjyo Darshane Kintatrahamato Bhavan Paramakim Jyotistarasmi Prabho Na Nirodhor Na Chotpattir Na Baddho Na Chasadhaka Na Mukshur Na Vaimukta Yesha Paramarthata. Today we are lucky to have Mr. Natraj Maneshinde to give us the evening lecture. Natraj Maneshinde is 28 years old engineer from Dharwad, Karnataka. He comes from a Kshatriya Maratha family and has completed his masters in electrical and computer engineering in Purdue University, USA. He currently works at Apple as a circuit design engineer. Natraj was introduced to Advaita Vedanta in his teenage days. Ever since, under the guidance of the elders of the tradition, he has been making attempts to understand more on the tenets of Advaita Sampradaya. Over to you, Natraj.
श्री गणेश शारदा सद्गुरुभ्यो नमः। माला सुधा कुंभ विबोध मुद्रा विद्याविराजत कर वारी जाताम अपार कारुण्य सुधांबुराशिं श्री शारदांबां प्रणतोस्मि नित्यं। श्रुति स्मृति पुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शंकरं लोकशंकरं। विद्युतैर्वय ग्रंथिः दृष्टे यस्मिनिति श्रुतिः जगोपरावरं शान्तं तं विद्यातीर्थमाश्रये। या मामनन्ति मुनयः प्रकृतिं पुराणीं विद्येति यां श्रुतिरहस्यविदो वदन्ति ताम अर्धपल्लवित शंकर रूपमुद्रां देवी मनन्य शरणः शरणं प्रपद्ये। Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Good evening everyone. I'm Natraj Maneshinde and I'm here to briefly discuss how our Acharyas, Bhagavadpada and other Advaitacharyas envisioned the Tattvika Swarupa of Uma. So as we know, in Advaita Siddhanta, the one Nirvishesha Brahman, out of its own Maya Shakti, assumes various forms in order to bless the spiritual aspirants. Bhagavadpadacharya says, Syat Parmeshwarasyapi Ichhavashat Mayamayam Rupam Sadhakanugrahartham. So we have a tradition of worshipping the Ishvara Tattva in the form of Shiva, Vishnu, Devi, Ganapati, Surya, and so on and so forth. Though the Upasya Murtis are varied, our Acharyas have always reminded us that the Chaitanya behind these Upasya Murtis is one and only one. Acharya Sureshwara says this in his Vartika. Yaha Prithivyamitesho Savantaryami Jagadguru Harir Brahma Pinakiti Bahudeko Bigiyate. Though the Ishvara, though the Antaryami is one and only one, it is merely spoken of variously as Hari, Brahma and Shiva. So among these varied forms of Ishvara, the form of Bhagavati, the form of Jagannatha has always been dear to us Advaitians. And this is evidenced by the elaborate Sri Chakra Puja that goes on in our Shankara Mathas, and also in the Orthodox Smarta households. Bhagavadpada himself was a devout Devi Upasaka and has composed divine works, sublime works on Devi, like Saundarya Lahari and Prapancha Saratantra. But there are some people who try to segregate Devi worship from Bhagavadpada and Advaita Sampradaya. Their claim is that Bhagavadpada hasn't spoken in favor of Devi in his Prasthana-traya Bhashyas, which per them are the only authentic works of Bhagavadpada. My intent is not to convince them otherwise, but at the same time, it is important to convey the futility of such objections to the sincere aspirants of Advaita Vedanta. To this effect, the best and the only instance that we need is the Akhyayika of Uma Haimavati, which occurs in the Kena Upanishad. So in this talk, we will be discussing Bhagavadpada's Bhashya on Kena Upanishad and other instances from the commentarial works of other Advaitacharyas where this Akhyayika has been discussed. And based on this, we'll try to outline the Tattvika Swarupa of Bhagavati Uma in the light of Advaita Vedanta, and thereby demonstrate that the love that we Advaitins have towards Bhagavati, it's not something that is foreign to us, but it is deeply rooted in the commentarial literature of our Sampradaya. So let's begin with looking at the Akhyayika of Uma Hemavati, which occurs in the third khanda of Kena Upanishad. On one occasion, the Devatas grew too proud of their victory over the Asuras, and they assumed that the victory belonged to themselves only. But in reality, their victory over the Asuras was due to the Brahman. And because Devatas were having this false pride, Brahman wanted to humble them and bless them with true knowledge. Hence, the Brahman appeared in the form of a Yaksha before the Devatas and asked them to move a blade of brass. Agni tried to move it, and even Vayu tried to move it, but they failed and they had to walk back. So finally, Indra himself had to approach the Indra, and as Indra approached the Yaksha vanished away. But unlike in Vayu and Agni who walked back, Indra stood there firmly and he was determined to know who the Yaksha was. So looking at this bhakti of Indra, Bhagavati Uma herself manifested there and revealed to Indra that the Yaksha is none other than Brahman. And thereby she blessed Indra with the knowledge of Brahma. She blessed Indra with Brahma Vidya. So this is the gist of the Akhyayika which occurs in the Kena Upanishad. Bhagavadpada has commented on this, and he has authored two commentaries on Kena Upanishad. One is the Pada Bhashya and the other is Vakya Bhashya. And other Advaitin Acharyas have also made a reference to this particular Akhyayika in their commentarial works. So we'll be looking at all these references and we'll try to understand how the Swarupa of Bhagavati Uma was understood by our Acharyas. So let us first begin with the Bhashya of Bhagavadpada. So as we just reviewed, the glory of the Devatas was indeed due to that of Brahman. And the Brahman is described by Bhagavadpada in his Kena Pada Bhashya as the Pratyagatman, as the bestower of Karma Phala, and as Sarva Shaktiman. And most importantly, Bhagavadpada describes this Brahman as Sarvagnya Ishvara. This is something that we'll have to remember. And this Brahman, this Sarvagnya Ishvara, out of his own will, assumes the form of the Yaksha. So the Yaksha who appeared before the Devatas is indeed the Brahman. It's indeed the Sarvagnya Ishvara. The same is stated in Acharya's Vakya Bhashya as well, where Acharya describes the Ishvara, describes the Brahman as Sarvagnya Ishvara again. And he also says that this Sarvagnya Ishvara himself, or Maheshwara, assumes the form of Yaksha by the virtue of his own Maya Shakti. So from these references, from Acharya's Bhashya, we know that the Brahman itself, or the Sarvagnya Ishvara itself, appeared in the form of Yaksha. Now let us see what Acharya says on Bhagavati Uma. So in his Kena Pada Bhashya, Acharya says, तस्येन्द्रस्य यक्षे भक्तिं बुद्ध्वा विद्या उमारूपिणी प्रादुरभूत् स्त्रीरूपा स इन्द्रः ताम् उमां बहुशोभमानां सर्वेषां शोभमानानां शोभनतमा विद्या तदा बहुशोभमानेति विशेषणम् उपपन्नं भवति हैमवतीं हेमकृत आभरणमतीमिव बहुशोभमानाम् इत्यर्थः अथवा उमैव हिमवतो दुहिता हैमवती नित्यमेव सर्वज्ञेन ईश्वरेण सह वर्तत इति ज्ञातुं समर्थेति कृत्वा ताम् उपजगाम. So, looking at the bhakti which Indra had towards knowing the Yaksha, Sakshat Brahma Vidya Tattva itself appeared in the form of Uma. So, Uma is indeed the Brahma Vidya Tattva, is what Acharya says. And Uma is described here as Bahushobhamana. She is the most, because the Vidya Tattva is the most fascinating of all fascinating things, the attribute Bahushobhamana is quite apt here. And she is also described as Haimavati. Acharya interprets Haimavati as Hemakrita Abharanamati Miva Bhushobhamana Mityartha. So she was looking splendorous as if it were a woman decked up in gold ornaments. So this is how Acharya interprets the word Haimavati. So so far, if you have seen, no particular reference to a Saguna Swarupa of Devi is mentioned so far, and Acharya doesn't seem to be satisfied with it. So if you observe, the job of a commentator is to explain the words occurring in the Mula, and those words here are Uma and Haimavati. So Uma, Acharya explains it to mean Vidya. Vidya Uma Rupini is what he says. And Haimavati, he has also interpreted it to mean Hemakrita Abharanamati Meva Bhushobhamana. So if Acharya did not have any special inclination towards the Saguna form of Bhagavati, he could have simply moved on, because his job as a commentator is done. But Acharya is not satisfied with this. His love for the Swarupa of Bhagavati Parvati makes him go further and furnish another interpretation for the word Haimavati. Acharya says, Athava Umaiva Himvato Duhita Haimavati Nityameva Sarvagnera Ishwarena Sahavartate. So, giving an alternative explanation, Acharya says that this Uma is indeed Bhagavati Parvati. She is indeed the daughter of Himavan, the Parvata Raja, and she resides eternally, or she is associated eternally with her Lord Sarvagnya Ishwara. So from this, Acharya clearly conveys that the Vidya Tattva which manifested before Indra is indeed Bhagavati Parvati, who is the daughter of Himavan. And the Sarvagnya Ishwara, who is being referred to here, with whom the daughter of Parvata Raja eternally resides, it goes without saying that this Sarvagnya Ishwara is none other than Bhagavan Shiva himself. So, and in the previous slides, from the previous slides, we understand that Sarvagnya Ishwara himself had manifested as the Yaksha. So from these Bhashya passages, we understand that Bhagavati Uma, the daughter of Himavan, is the Brahma Vidya Tattva, and her Lord, Bhagavan Shiva, the Sarvagnya Ishwara, who also manifested as the Yaksha, is indeed the Brahman. So this is what we can conclude from Acharya's Bhashya. And the same has been stated in Kena Vakya Bhashya as well, where Acharya says, Abhiprayodbodha hitutvat Rudrapatni Uma Haimavativa Bahushobhamana Vidyaiva. So because she was responsible for revealing the true nature of Yaksha to Indra, this Rudrapatni Uma is indeed the Vidya Tattva. And she is Bahushobhamana. And how is that so? Haimavativa Bahushobhamana is what Acharya says. So she is splendorous like a woman decked up in gold ornaments. Ata Indrasya Bodha Hitutvat Vidyaiva, because she was responsible for Indra's realization of Brahman, this Uma is indeed the Vidya. And like in the Padabhashya, to convey that she eternally resides with her Lord Bhagavan Shiva, Acharya quotes a Smriti which says Vidya Sahayavan Ishwaraha. So this particular Smriti Vakya, I'm not sure if we can trace it to if we can trace it exactly to any of the Puranas, but this sentence Vidya Sahayavan Ishwaraha in the context of Uma, this surely reminds us of the Saguna Dhyana from Kaivalya Upanishad, which says Uma Sahayam Parameshwaram Prabhum Trilochanam Neelakantam Prashantam Tattva Munir Gacchati Bhuta Yonim Samasta Sakshim Tamasah Parastat. So this Vidya Sahayavan Ishwaraha, it is in according with the Shruti Vakya, which describes the Saguna Dhyana of Uma Maheshwara, which says Uma Sahayam Parameshwaram Prabhu. So we are reminded of this Kaivalya Shruti in this context. So to sum up our learnings from Bhashya, we understand that in the view of Bhagavadpada, Bhagavati Uma is indeed the Brahma Vidya Tattva. And this Bhagavati Uma is verily Bhagavati Parvati, the daughter of Himavan, and who is eternally residing with her Lord Bhagavan Shiva, the Sarvagni Ishvara. And we also understand that this Brahman, or the Sarvagni Ishvara, who had manifested as Yaksha, is indeed Bhagavan Shiva. So, from the study of our Bhashya, we can conclude that Bhagavan Umapati Shiva is the Brahman, and Bhagavati Uma is the Brahma Vidya Tattva. Now that we have looked at the Bhashya of Bhagavadpada, let us look at the work of another Advaita Acharya called Swami Shankarananda Saraswati Ji. Swami Shankarananda Saraswati was the guru of Swami Vidyaranya, and he has contributed immensely to the literature of Advaita Vedanta. He has composed Deepikas on various Upanishads. There is also a Brahma Sutra Vritti authored by him. And his popular work, Shankaranandi Tika on Bhagavad Gita, is popularly studied in the traditional circles. Apart from these works on Prasthana-traya, Swami Shankaranandaji has also composed a magnanimous work called Atma Purana. And this work, it brings out the essence of various Upanishads in the form of in a Puranic style. So it is a metrical composition. It is a Shloka-baddha commentary on the Upanishads. So in his Atma Purana, Swami Shankaranandaji also comments on, also discusses the Kenopanishad. And in the Akhyayika, where Bhagavati Uma appears, Swami Shankaranandaji composes a few verses describing the Swarupa of Bhagavati Uma. So Swami Shankaranandaji says, Tasminneva tadakashe balavirya samanvitaha galokayat striyam kanchit tarunim rupashalinim himavattanayam sarva guna lakshana shalinim. So verily there in the sky, where Yaksha had disappeared, Indra beheld a beautiful young lady with all auspicious attributes. She was indeed the daughter of Himavan. Shobhamanam Shriyasvasya Anupamya Vapurdharam Atmani Snehamapannam Mataram Bhaginimiva Umam Bhavanim Devim Tam Brahma Vidyati Kirtitam. She was looking glorious due to her own grace. Her body was beyond any comparison, and like a compassionate mother or a sister, Bhavani Uma or Shiva Patni Uma, who is known as Brahma Vidya, was gracing Indra. Sarvadopanishatsveva vasanti manaseshu cha yatinam paramahamsanam brahmacharyadi bhajinam. She always resides in the Upanishads as the Brahma Vidya Tattva, and she also resides in the pure minds of the Paramahamsa sannyasis who are ever established in Brahmacharya. Vamadevasya yavame bhage bhartur mahatmanah smarashatro trinetrasya brahmano yaksharupinah. So this shloka is quite important, because here Swami Shankaranandaji says that it is Bhagavan Trinetradhari Vamadeva Shiva himself who made his appearance before Indra as the Yaksha. And because Uma is always associated with her Lord, she is always with her Lord Bhagavan Shiva, even she made her appearance there in the form of Brahma Vidya. So from these verses of Atma Purana of Shankarananda Saraswati Ji, we again understand that Bhagavan Shiva is the Brahman who appeared as the Yaksha, and Bhagavati Uma is the Brahma Vidya Tattva. So there is another chapter in Atma Purana where we find the description of Uma, and that occurs in the chapter dealing with Kaivalya Upanishad. So as we saw earlier, in Kaivalya Upanishad, there is a Saguna Dhyana of Brahman meant for those adhikaris who are not capable enough to perform the Nirguna Dhyana. And this Saguna Dhyana and the Upasya Murti of this Saguna Dhyana is Uma Maheshwara. So the Shruti says, Uma Sahayam Parameshwaram Prabhum Tridochanam Neelakantam Prashantam Dhyatva Munir Gacchati Bhuta Yonim Samasta Sakshim Tamasa Parasthat. So describing the Swarupa of Bhagavati Uma, who is stationed in this Upasya Murti, Shankaranandaji composes these verses. Uma Bhagavati Yeyam Brahma Vidyeti Kirtita Rupa Yovana Sampanna Vadur Bhutvatra Sasthita. So in this Saguna Vigraha of Parameshwara, Bhagavati Uma, who is known as the Brahma Vidya, who is endowed with youth and beauty, is stationed as the consort of Parameshwara. Yasya Prasadatas Sarvaha Swargam Moksham Cha Gacchati Iha Loke Sukham Tadvad Jantur Devadi Kopiva. So all the beings attain Swarga or Moksha only by Bhagavati Uma's grace. And the happiness that the Devatas or the normal creatures get in this world is also solely due to her. Brahma Vishnustata Rudraha Shakradhya Sarva Devataha Katakshapatato Yasya Bhavanti Na Bhavanti Cha. So Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Indra and all the other Devatas, they perform their respective functions only by the virtue of Bhagavati Uma's glance. And without Bhagavati's glance, they are incapable of performing their functions. So Shankaranandaji, by describing Bhagavati Uma as the impeller of, as the controller of the Trimurtis and all the Devatas, is conveying the supremacy of Bhagavati Uma. Hence, from these verses of Atma Purana, we can understand the Shraddha and the Bhakti which Shankarananda Saraswati ji had towards the Swarupa of Bhagavati Parvati. Yeah, so from the Bhashya and from Shankarananda ji's Atma Purana, we understand that Bhagavan Shiva is the Brahman and Bhagavati Uma is the Brahma Vidya. But are we to regard these two as separate entities? Are we to regard them as distinct entities, or is there some relation between the two? So to understand this, we'll have to look into the we'll have to look into the words of Swami Vidyaranya. Like his Guru Swami Shankarananda, Vidyaranya Mahaswami ji has also composed a Shlokabaddha commentary on Upanishads, and this is called Anubhuti Prakasha. In the Kenopanishad chapter of Anubhuti Prakasha, while describing the appearance of Bhagavati Uma, Vidyaranya Swami ji says, Anugrahitum Indram tam Uma Rupo Bhavatharaha. In order to bless Indra, Bhagavan Shiva himself appeared in the form of Uma. So from this clear statement of Swami Vidyaranya, we understand that it is Shiva himself, it is Parameshwara himself who manifests as Uma, and there is no difference between the two. So we are not to regard them as distinct, but Uma is same as Ishvara, Uma is same as Shiva. And Vidyaranya Swamiji states it very clearly in his work. So from Vidyaranyaji's statement, we understand that Ishvara, there is no difference between Ishvara and Uma, which would also mean that there is no difference between Brahma and Brahma Vidya. But how are we to understand this identity in the light of our Siddhanta? How do we understand this from a Tattvic point of view? So for this, we'll have to study the Tika of Anandagiri Acharya. So we'll be looking at two statements from Anandagiri Acharya's Tika, one from Kena Vakya Bhashya Tika and the other from Mundaka Bhashya Tika. So let us look at the Kena Vakya Bhashya Tika first. In the Vakya Bhashya, as we saw earlier, Bhagavadpada says, Ata Indrasya Bodha Hetutvat Vidyaiva Uma. Because Uma was responsible for Indra's realization of Brahman, she is indeed the Vidya. This is what Bhagavadpadacharya says. So commenting on this statement of the Bhashya, Anandagiri Acharya in his Tika explains what exactly is meant by this Vidya in this context. So Anandagiri Acharya says, Vidyeti sattva pradhana shaktihi chittadatmya patya bodha hetuhu. Vidya is the sattva pradhana shakti which has attained tadatmya with the chit, with the Shuddha Chaitanya or the Brahman. So Anandagiri Acharya says Vidya is the sattva pradhana shakti which has attained an identification or which has attained a sense of likeness with the Shuddha Chaitanya. So Chittadatmyapanna Sattva Pradhana Shakti is Vidya, or Chittadatmyapanna Sattva Pradhana Shakti is Bhagavati Uma. So those who are familiar with the Vartika Prasthana, with the Abhasavada of Sureshwaracharya, they can infer that this statement of Anandagiri Acharya is referring to some particular Tattva of Advaita Vedanta. and that Tattva is the Ishvara Tattva. So to understand more, we'll have to understand how is Ishvara Tattva defined in Vartika Prasthana or Sureshwaracharya's Abhasavada. So in the terminology of Abhasavada, Ishvara is said to be a triad of Maya, Abhasa and Shuddha Chaitanya. Maya, Bhaso, Vishuddhatma, Trayametan, Maheshwara is what Bhagavadpada says in one of his Prakarana Granthas called Swatma Prakashika. So there is so there is Shuddha Chaitanya, then there is Maya, and then there is Abhasa. Abhasa means the semblance or the appearance of Shuddha Chaitanya in Maya. So when these three things come together, so to say, we have the Ishvara Tattva. Maya alone cannot be the Ishvara because Maya is Jada. And Shuddha Chaitanya, even that cannot be Ishvara because it is Nirvishesha, it is Nishkriya, and it is Shanta, it is the Shanta Brahman. So even that cannot be the Ishvara. And Abhasa, because it is a non-entity, because it is merely an appearance, even that cannot be Ishvara in its own right. So for Ishvara Tattva to exist, so these three things, that is Maya, Abhasa and Shuddha Chaitanya, they have to come together. So in a manner of speaking. So this Ishvara is a triad of Maya, Abhasa and Shuddha Chaitanya. This has been explained more elaborately by Swami Madhusudana Saraswati ji in his Siddhanta Bindu, where he describes the Abhasavada of Vartikakara. So furnishing the definition of Ishvara, Madhusudana Saraswati ji says, Ajnanopahita Atma, Ajnanatadatmyapanna, Swachidabhasa Vivekat, Antaryami Sakshi Jagat Karanam Ishvara iti cha Kathyate. So the Atman or the Shuddha Chaitanya, which has Ajnana as its Upadhi, which is conditioned by Ajnana or Maya, has attained a sense of likeness or a sense of identification with the Maya. It has attained Tadatmya with the Maya. And this is called Ishvara and Jagat Karana, Sakshi or Antaryami. And why is there a Tadatmya between Shuddha Chaitanya and Maya? So answering this, Madhusudana Saraswati ji says, Swachidabhasa Vivekat. Because there is aviveka, or because due to avidya, we are not able to distinguish between the Shuddha Chaitanya and the Chidabhasa, that is the appearance of Shuddha Chaitanya in Maya. So there is viveka between the Shuddha Chit and its avidyagata Chidabhasa. So because of this aviveka, this entity, which is Ajnana Tadatmyapanna Atma, or Shakti Tadatmyapanna Chit, or Maya Tadatmyapanna Chit, this entity is regarded as Ishvara in the Vartika Mata. So in the Vartika Mata, Ajnana Tadatmyapanna Chit or Shakti Tadatmyapanna Chit is defined as the Ishvara Tattva. So in the light of this definition of Ishvara as per the Vartika Prasthana, when we keep this in mind, and when we read the statement of Anandagiri Acharya defining Uma or Vidya, where Acharya defines Vidya or Uma as Chit Tadatmya Panna Sattva Pradhana Shakti, we understand that it is verily the Ishvara Tattva of Vartika Prasthana that is being referred to here. So Bhagavati Uma, in the light of Vartika Prasthana and in the light of Anandagiri Acharya's Tika, is indeed the Ishvara Tattva. She is the Chit Tadatmya Panna Sattva Pradhana Shakti, which is indeed the Ishvara. And because the Upadhi here is the Sattva Pradhana Shakti, we can say that Bhagavati Uma, who is the Vidya Tattva, is the purest manifestation of Ishvara. So we have concluded that, and one more thing, and from this we also understand that the statement made by Swami Vidyaranya that Shiva himself appears as Uma, or Ishvara himself appears as Uma, that stands justified from a Tattvic point of view as well. And this we understand from the Tika and Vartika and the definition of Ishvara that we just reviewed. So when we say Ishvara himself manifests as Uma, it also means that Brahman itself manifests as Brahma Vidya. So how are we to understand this identity from a Tattvic point of view? So explaining this, so to understand this, we'll have to look at one statement of Anandagiri Acharya from his Mundaka Bhashya Tika, where he defines Brahma Vidya. Anandagiri Acharya says, Vakyota buddhi vrutyabhivyaktam brahmaiva Brahma Vidya. So Brahma Vidya is indeed the Brahman which manifests through the buddhi vritti arising out of the Mahavakyas. So what does this mean? So in a capable aspirant of Vedanta who has secured the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, when such an aspirant engages in Vedanta study, in the study of the Upanishads, and he contemplates on the Vedanta Mahavakyas like Aham Brahmasmi and Tattvamasi, an Akhandakara vritti or a Brahmakara vritti is generated in his intellect. And the Brahman which gets reflected on this Akhandakara vritti or which manifests through this Akhandakara vritti is technically defined as Brahma Vidya in our Sampradaya. So Brahma Vidya, who is none other than Bhagavati Uma, can be defined as Vrutyupahita Brahma. She is the Brahman who manifests through Mahavakyajanya Akhandakara vritti. So because Bhagavati Uma is the Vrutyupahita Brahman and the Upadhi here is the Akhandakara vritti, which demolishes or which eradicates all evils of the samsara, we can say that Bhagavati Uma or the Brahma Vidya Tattva is the purest manifestation of the Brahman. Yeah, so from an involved discussion on Anandagiri Acharya's Tika in the light of Vartika Prasthana, we could conclude that Bhagavati Uma is the Ishwar Tattva as per the Vartika Prasthana. This is not something that we have inferred out of our own accord based on our own mental efforts, but there are explicit statements in the works of our Acharyas where the Ishwaratva of Uma has been upheld. And we'll be looking at 3 such pramanas in the next slides. The first pramana that we'll be looking at is from Siddhanta Bindu Swami Madhusudana Saraswati Ji. Siddhanta Bindu is a commentary on Dashashloki of Bhagavadpadacharya. And while commenting on the 8th shloka of Dashashloki, Madhusudana Saraswati Ji discusses the Ishvara Tattva. And he concludes this discussion with this beautiful statement where Swamiji says, Evam cha ekasyaiva chaturbhuja chaturmukha panchamukhadhyaha umakaraha Shri Bharati Bhavanyadhyaha striyakaraha Anye cha matsya kurmadayo anantavatara Leelayaiva bhavanti bhaktanugraharthamityeva dheyam. So Madhusudana Saraswati Ji says, the one Ishvara alone assumes the Purusha forms like Chaturbhuja Vishnu, Chaturmukha Brahma and Panchamukha Shiva. And the same Ishvara also assumes the female forms like Shri, Bharati and Bhavani, that is Lakshmi, Saraswati and Parvati. And it also assumes the numerous avatars of Matsya, Kurma and so on. And this it does so purely in order to bless the aspirants. For Bhakta Anugrahartha, the Ishvara assumes these various forms. So from this statement of Madhusudana Saraswati Ji, we understand that all the Upasya Murtis, be it the Trimurtis or their Patnis, all of them are indeed the varied manifestations of the same Ishvara. So one thing to note here is that is that Swami Madhusudana Saraswati Ji was a devout Krishna Bhakta, but that doesn't prevent him from saying that the same Ishvara manifests as the Trimurtis and as the Tridevis. And this conviction of Madhusudana Saraswati Ji as an Advaitin Acharya, that all the Upasya Murtis are the varied manifestations of the same Ishvara, this conviction is rooted in Swami Sureshwaracharya's Vartika that we saw in the beginning of the presentation, where Sureshwaracharya says, Yaha pruthivyami tisho savantaryami jagadguruhu harir brahma pinakiti bhaude kopi giyate. So though the antaryami, the Ishvara is one and only one, is merely spoken of as varied. His various is spoken of as Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. So because the Trimurtis and their consorts are indeed the Ishvara Tattva, it goes without saying that Bhagavati Uma, who is described here as Bhavani, is indeed the Ishvara. And so the Siddhanta Bindu of Swami Madhusudana Saraswati ji has 4 commentaries actually, and we'll be looking at 2 commentaries in the next slides. One from Swami Narayana Tirtha and the other from Swami Brahmananda Saraswati. Both the Acharyas comment on this line that we have just discussed, and while doing so, they go in detail describing the Ishwaratva of Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Bhavani. And while they discuss the Ishwaratva of Bhavani, they invoke the authority of this very episode of Uma Haimavati from Kenopanishad. So let us see what the Acharyas say on Uma. So in his Narayani Tika, Swami Narayana Tirtha says, Tatas sarva devan ajnane nakulam društva tat brahma jaganmatra rupena tasmin nakashe pradurbhutam tam stremuma namikam haimavatim himavatah dhuitaram Indramajagama kimetadantaritam yakshamiti prushthavan. So Narayana Tirthaji very clearly says that tad brahma jaganmatra rupena tasmin akashe pradurbhutam. The Brahman itself appears in the form of Jaganmata. And who is this Jaganmata? Striyamuma namikam haimavatim himavata dhuitaram. So this Jaganmata in the form of so this Brahman who appears in the form of Jaganmata, and this Jaganmata is indeed Uma Haimavati, Bhagavati Parvati, was approached by Indra. And because it is clearly stated here that Brahman itself appears in the form of Bhagavati Uma, Narayana Tirtha says that Atromaya Ishwaratvam Spashtam. From this Akhyayika, the Ishwaratva of Uma is very clearly conveyed. The same is said. Same has been stated in by Swami Brahmananda Saraswati ji in his Naya Ratnavali. Brahmananda Saraswati ji says, Tatas sarva devanam paramaptena jaganmatra rupena nijarupantarena antardhanasya tasmin akashe avakashe tatra brahma pradurbhutam tam striyamuma himavato duhitaram indram ajagama. So this is quite interesting. So Swami Brahmananda says that dearly disposed towards the devatas, Bhagavati Uma, Jaganmata Bhagavati Uma, made her appearance at that very spot where she herself had previously appeared in the form of Yaksha. So the Yaksha is described as a Nijarupantara of Uma. He is verily another form of Uma. So in the view of Swami Brahmananda Saraswati, the same Brahman which had appeared in the form of Yaksha is now making its appearance in the form of Jaganmata Uma. Hence from this description as well, because the Brahman itself is appearing in the form of Jaganmata Uma, Swami Brahmananda Saraswati ji says that Atra Uma Devya Ishwaratvam Spashtam. From this Akhyayika, the Ishwaratva of Uma is clearly established. So from the pen of authoritative acharyas like Swami Brahmananda Saraswati, like Swami Narayana Tirtha and Swami Madhusudana Saraswati ji himself, we understand that our acharyas have beheld Bhagavati Uma as the Ishwara Tattva. So she is verily the Ishwara. So far we have looked at many pramanas, and we have understood and we have concluded that Bhagavati Uma is the Ishwara Tattva. But at the same time, there are numerous Shastra Vakyas, there are numerous statements in Puranas where Bhagavati is described in the form of Shakti. Even in the common parlance, we get to hear words like Adi Shakti or Mahamaya for Bhagavati Uma. So Bhagavati Uma or Durga, she is described as Adi Shakti or Mahamaya. Such being the case, how are we to reconcile these two? Ishvara is Chetana, but Maya or Shakti is Jada as per our Siddhanta. Such being the case, should we regard Bhagavati Uma as Ishvara, or should we regard her as Shakti? So this question can arise in our minds. And to our great fortune, this question has been answered by Swami Brahmananda Saraswati ji in this very work of Naya Ratnavali. So in his Nyaya Ratnavali, after establishing the Ishwaratva of Lakshmi, Saraswati and Parvati, Swami Brahmananda ji raises a Purva Paksha. he quotes some verses from Varaha Purana, where Devi is described in the form of Shakti. So in those verses, Raudri is described as Tamasi Shakti, Vaishnavi is described as Rajasi Shakti, and the Brahmi Shakti is described as Satvika. And Brahmi is described as Satviki Shakti. So Brahmanandaji says, Ityadi Varaha Purana Vachanair Bhavanyadinam Shakti Rupata Ukta. So Bhavani and other forms of Devi, whom we ourselves have established as Ishvara a while back, is described in these Puranas in the form of Shakti. So such being the case, how do we resolve this contradiction? So answering this Purva Paksha, Swami Brahmananda Saraswati ji resolves this contradiction by resorting to Vartika Prasthana of Sureshwaracharya. Swami Brahmananda Saraswati ji says that there is no real contradiction here. And why is that so? Swamiji says, Chidabhasa Yukta Ajnanasyaiva Vartika Mate Ishwaratva Swikarat. So because in the view of Vartikakara, the Chidabhasa Yukta Ajnana or the Chidabhasa Yukta Shakti itself is described as Ishvara. Hence, there is no real contradiction here. So as we reviewed in one of our previous slides, in the Abhasavada or in Vartika Prasthana, Ishvara consists of Maya, Abhasa and Shuddha Chaitanya. So Maya, Bhasa, Vishuddhatma, Trayametan, Maheshwara is what is said. So seen in this, so because Ishvara is the triad of Maya, Abhasa and Shuddha Chaitanya, Ishvara can be defined as Chidabhasa Yukta Maya or Chidabhasa Yukta Shakti, or Shakti which is having the semblance of the Shuddha Chaitanya in it. Hence in Vartika Prasthana, Ishvara is defined as Chidabhasa Yukta Shakti. And to support this view, Swami Brahmananda Saraswati ji quotes two sentences here. The first sentence that he quotes is a Shruti Vakya, which is probably from Nrsimhatapani Upanishad. And that sentence goes like this: Seyam Maya Chaitanya Deepta Brahma Vishnu Shiva Rupini. So the Chaitanya Deepta Maya, the Maya illuminated by Chaitanya, appears in the form of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. So it is the Chaitanya Deepta Maya and not just Jada Maya and not just inert Maya, but Chaitanya Deepta Maya that appears in the form of the Trimurtis. So Chaitanya Deepta Maya or Chidabhasa Yukta Maya appears as the Ishvara Tattva. So Brahmananda Saraswati ji also quotes another sentence here, and this sentence is from the popular work of Sarvajñatma Muni ji called Sankshepa Sharirika. Sabhasa Ajnanavachi Yadi Bhavati Punar Brahma Shabda is what is quoted here. And this line, the verse from where this line is quoted, that verse is meant to explain the purport of the Mahavakya Ham Brahmasmi by employing something that is called Jahal Lakshana. I won't be going into the details of it because it can get a bit technical, but just to give a gist, the ordinary connotation of the word Brahma in Ham Brahmasmi or the word Tat in Tattvamasi is the Ishvara. And this ordinary connotation or the literal meaning or the apparent meaning is called Vachyartha. The Vachyartha of the word Brahma in Aham Brahmasmi is the Ishvara, whereas the Lakshyartha is of course the Shuddha Chaitanya. And this line is defining the Vachyartha of the word Brahma. Sabhas Ajnana Vachi Yadi Bhavati Punar Brahma Shabda. So the Vachyartha of the word Brahma in Aham Brahmasmi, which is the Ishvara, is defined here as Sabhasa Ajnana, or the Ajnana having the Abhas of Chit. So even from this definition, even from this definition from Sankshepa Sharirika, it is the Chidabhasa Yukta Ajnana or Chidabhasa Yukta Shakti that is defined as the Ishvara Tattva. So as Ishvara, so because Ishvara is defined as Chidabhasa Yukta Shakti in Vartika Prasthana, it would amount to no harm if Bhagavati Uma is described in the form of Shakti. Because in all the places where Uma is described as Shakti, we ought to understand that it is the Chidabhasa Yukta Shakti that is being spoken of, and this Chidabhasa Yukta Shakti is nothing but the Ishvara Tattva. So Uma's Ishwaratva is not contradicted by the statements where she is described as Shakti, because Chidabhasa Yukta Shakti is indeed the Ishvara. So we have reviewed many pramanas from the works of our Acharyas so far, and at this point I would like to summarize all that we have reviewed. So from the Bhashya and from the Atma Purana of Swami Shankarananda, we understand that Umapati Bhagavan Shiva is the Brahman, and Bhagavati Uma, who is the daughter of Himavan, is the Brahma Vidya Tattva. And from the statement of Swami Vidyaranya, we understand that Bhagavan Shiva is not different from Uma, because it is Bhagavan Shiva, Parameshwara himself, who appears in the form of Uma. And this would also mean that Brahman itself appears in the form of Brahma Vidya. And the Tattvika meaning of this identity, the Siddhantic meaning of this identity, we understood it more from Anandagiri Acharya's Tika, by studying Anandagiri Acharya's Tika in the light of Vartika Prasthana. And there we could conclude that Bhagavati Uma is indeed the Ishvara Tattva of Vartika Prasthana. And then we looked at the statements of Swami Madhusudana Saraswati Ji, Swami Narayana Tirtha, and Swami Brahmananda, which further uphold the Ishwaratva of Uma. And finally, we reconciled the Advaitic understanding that Uma is the Ishvara Tattva with the Purana Vakyas which describe her in the form of Maya or Shakti, by resorting to Vartika Prasthana, where Ishvara is defined as Chidabhasa Yukta Shakti or Chidabhasa Yukta Maya. So in the light of all these pramanas that we have just looked at, we can appreciate the Shraddha and the Bhakti that our Acharyas have always had towards the Swarupa of Bhagavati Uma. If you have observed, we have not touched upon any Stotra Granthas like Saundarya Lahari or any Upasana-oriented Grantha like Prapancha Saratantra in our discussion. We have purely restricted ourselves to the Vedanta Vyakhyana Granthas authored by our Acharyas, right from Bhagavadpada's Bhashya to Nyaya Ratnavali of Swami Brahmananda Saraswati Ji. And even in such pure philosophical works, we have seen that our Acharyas have abundantly described the glory of Bhagavati Uma. Such being the case, we can understand that this inclination that we Advaitins have towards the Swarupa of Bhagavati Uma, that it is not something foreign to us and there is nothing surprising about it, but it is deeply rooted in the commentarial literature of our Sampradaya. And because we regard Bhagavati Uma as Sakshat Brahma Vidya Swarupini, all our dharmic pursuits as Vedantins are aimed at attaining this Brahma Vidya Swarupini Uma. Such being the significance of Bhagavati Uma in our Sampradaya, it is but natural for us Advaitins to be inclined towards Devi worship, and there is nothing surprising about it. So with these concluding remarks, I would like to take the talk towards its closure. But before I wrap up, I would like to recite a shloka from a work called Advaita Martanda, composed by Swami Brahmananda Tirtha. Swami Brahmananda Tirtha was an Advaitin Acharya of recent day, probably somewhere in 1800s, and he was the guru of the Maharaja of Jammu. And in his work called Advaita Martanda, he composes a Mangalanta shloka where he provides a beautiful description of Bhagavati, both of her Sthula Swarupa, of her Sthula Dhyana, and also of her Tattvika Swarupa. And the Tattvika Swarupa that is described in this verse very, very much aligns with the discussion that we have just had on the Swarupa of Bhagavati Uma. So Swamiji says, Brahmanandaika Murtim Smithamukha Kamalam Indu Suryagni Netram Brahmandanam Adhisham Shrutinuta Vibhavam Brahma Vidyadhi Devim Adyam Pashankushadhyam Abhayavarakaram Dadimi Pushpakantim Chitshaktim Chandramaulim Rudaya Kamalagam Chintaye Moksha Lakshmi. So the verse says, I contemplate on the Swayam Prakasha Chit Shakti stationed in my lotus heart, who wears a moon on her head, who is the bestower of moksha, whose form is verily that of Brahman, which is the bliss, who is the controller of the universes, who is the primordial cause of the Jagat, who is glorified by the Shruti, as of course as Uma Hemavati, and who is the Adhishthatri of Brahma Vidya, and who bears a mild smile on her face, and who has Surya, Chandra, Agni as her 3 eyes, who is red-hued like a pomegranate flower, and who has Abhaya, Varada, Pasha, and Ankusha in her forearms. So by offering this shloka at the feet of Bhagavati, and by offering my humble namaskars at the feet of Bhagavadpada, I would like to conclude my talk. Shri Jagadamba Arpanamastu, Shri Sadguru Charana Arpanamastu.
Thank you. Thank you, Maneshinde. It was great. Yo yang yang tanum bhakta shraddhaya chitamicchati tasya tasya shadam shraddham dhamyo dhamyam. Bhagavan Sri Krishna promises to get manifested for whatever form or name you give for the purpose of Bhashya. Well, so long as the Upasya and Upasak grade is there, the Advaita philosophy is not at all having any conflict with Upasya, Upasak, grade and Upasana. In fact, for the purpose of Chitta Shanti, Upasana is a must. Nishkam Upasana is a must. So it was beautifully explained by you, the Swarupa Lakshanani based Uma and Tatastha Lakshanani based Uma, both being one and the same. Sthula Sukshma Ekagovindore. Fantastic. Very good. I enjoyed it personally, and viewers also must have liked it. Thank you very much. Viewers, tomorrow is the symposium on Indian knowledge system, polymaths, exploring the legacy and the future of multidisciplinary thinking in Bharat. That is the whole day symposium from 9 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. All are requested to join as per their conveniences. Thank you. Om Purnamada
tomorrow's session.
Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Uchishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Sanjay, please announce tomorrow morning session also.
Yeah. Tomorrow viewers are requested to join tomorrow morning session at 7 a.m. Indian Standard Time. And this is the session which is going to be the special weekend session for 4 weekends. We had already 1 weekend session, and the second weekend session is tomorrow. All are requested to join positive. Thank you.